Mark, guys were talking this morning about Detroit being a team that will sometimes send pressure up the floor pretty far. How valuable is it that every guy that you have can handle it and bring the ball up, including all of your centers?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a good pressure release for us. Um, so that's helpful. But I'm excited to see us play this team. I thought they did a great job against us in the last game. It was a really physical game with a lot of pressure. Chet and Dub were out, and it really stress tested our ability to handle their pressure and their physicality. And Houston coming up next is similar. You know, we get back-to-back games here against teams that are very switchable, very physical, great ball pressure, great defensively, and it'll be a good test for our offense.
Mark, April's Autism Awareness Acceptance Month. I understand you're going to be wearing some shoes. Just your thoughts on getting the opportunity to participate in that.
Yeah, it's an honor to do it. 1 in 37 children are diagnosed with autism in the United States right now. It's the highest rate ever recorded. Um, Shout out to Scott Morrison, who's an assistant with Utah, who he and his family have done an unbelievable job and been a huge catalyst in getting all the coaches to participate in something like this. And really, it's just about acceptance for people who see and experience the world differently, and just focusing on support and inclusion and kindness. And so to participate is an honor.
Yeah. Coach, how important is it to finish with the league's best record? I mean, how much does that matter to you in terms of positioning?
It's like anything else. We've just been on this track for 5 years of um, focusing on our process every day, focusing on our environment every day, focusing on improving, focusing on fundamentals, focusing on stacking games and possessions, and that's yielded positive outcomes. And the worst thing, in my opinion, that we can do in light of that is to shift our focus to outcomes. It's like we want to keep doing all those things and trust that if we do those things, we'll get the best outcomes we can. And if that turns out to be the best record in the league, so be it. If it doesn't, we've put our best foot forward. But we're not going to take the temptation of starting to look um, ahead or at bigger picture things. We just need to stay present and continue to improve and stack and see where that lands us.
Coach, given the level of physicality that the Pistons have, you just mentioned, and the fact that that can't necessarily be quantified by stats, how do you go about trying to combat that?
I mean, it's easier said than done. It's kind of like, we just played three really fast teams, and you go into those games and you're like, hey, Memphis is going to play really fast and Indiana plays really fast and Chicago plays really fast. But until you're out there in the speed of it, you can't really prepare for it. And their physicality and pressure is similar to that, and so some of it's just growing through the experience of the first time we played them. There's things we could have done better in that game to loosen some of their pressure and physicality. Um, on that particular night, it was also a very, very loose whistle for both teams. So, that certainly contributed to how muddy the game was. But, we have an opportunity to improve tonight. And, we'll see how we do. But they have an opportunity to improve too. And, they're going to be hungry to play. They've made a habit of being ready to play all season.
He's doubtful tonight, but what have you seen from Kate Cunningham just with the leap he's taken this season to help this team as well?
Yeah, impressive. I don't study. First of all, I don't see the East Coast teams as much just in scouting. We see the West way more, so I can't pretend to be an expert on their team or on him. But he's always been really impressive in terms of his floor game, his feel at that size. And I just think it's probably his body getting a little stronger, the game slowing down a little for him learning the pictures. But he's always, this isn't like a revelation. I don't think he's always been really good. He's obviously taken a step, but I think it's been pretty predictable just with his size, feel, IQ, maturity of his game. He's an impressive player. He's having a great year.
They were talking about physicality as one of those like sort of invisible, not measurable factors. I wanted to ask you the same thing about chemistry because that's something that I think every great team would say is a big factor, but it's not something really definable. So how would you define chemistry or how it looks between a team?
I mean, it's just like, are you better than the sum of your parts? I think is the best equation for it. It's like you have individual parts, you have individual talent, um, and is the whole better than the sum? And if it is, then that's probably a pretty good indicator of chemistry. That's really one of the only ways you can accomplish that is being really connected. Otherwise, you're just as good as your sum or worse.
Anybody else? Go around. Last over the line.
You've talked a lot about Caruso in the recent days, and specifically about kind of how engaged he is in the games, especially even dead balls and on the sidelines. When did you first notice that about him? Was that back to your G League days with him?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Florida, he was at A&M, and I remember there was a game that we were playing. We had a really, really good team, and they were really, really young. He was a freshman, and it was in Gainesville, and we were beating the doors off of them. You know, we were like up by a lot of points, like early too, and it was just one of those games that, you know, everyone's in the arena is probably just waiting for the time to go out, and he was on the court on the other end of that in a blowout, and I had never laid eyes on. I had never seen him before, but it was impressive the way that he was competing. He almost like was he didn't know what the score was. It was almost like, does this guy know what's going on right now? You know, like, does he know what everybody else knows? And funny enough, like Jay Will played a G League game here that was similar, and I had a similar like epiphany with him because they were playing the Lakers G League team here, and they were getting absolutely blasted, and this was his rookie year before he entered the rotation, and I was at the game, and it was just one of those games where like everything that could go wrong went wrong, and it was similar. And I just thought his energy never wavered, especially with his teammates, you know, and it was the classic game that would zap your energy. So I think there's opportunity to learn about people when they're in those situations, and those are two guys that in those particular nights transcended those situations, and I think that's pretty telling. And certainly they followed through on that in every situation.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you, everybody.